Hi everyone, in this video we're going to solve the exercises from 1 to 6 of chapter 9. The chapter is Application International Trade. This is a book of Gregory Mankiw, Principles of Economics. So the first point says, the United States represents a small part of the world's orange market. A. Draw a diagram depicting the equilibrium in the U.S. orange market without international trade. Identify the equilibrium price, equilibrium quantity, consumer surplus, and producer surplus. So basically what we have here, as usual, in the y-axis we have the price. This is the orange market, so it's going to have naturally the price of orange. In the other axis we have the quantity of orange. So here we have the S, which basically stands for supply. So supply, as usual, is upward slope, okay, and we have the demand as usual as downward slope. So the equilibrium is going to be where both curves they get together. So we have here the P star and we have here the Q star. So here, this identify the equilibrium price is going to be P star, identify the equilibrium quantity is going to be Q star, and the consumer surplus is going to be basically kind of the saving of the consumers. So, because remember, along this part of the curve, there are going to be consumers that they are willing to pay even more than P stars, but they don't have to pay that. Why? Because it's going to be given by the P star. So all this triangle from the cut here to the y-axis until the P star, this triangle is going to be considered as the consumer surplus. Analogously, we have the producer surplus. Basically, it's kind of the benefits that the producers they will have due to the P star or due to the equilibrium price. So along this curve there are going to be several farmers that they will they are willing to produce even to prices lower than P stars, but they don't have to, again, due to the P star. So this triangle, when you project this curve until the cut and you have this triangle, is going to be considered as the producer surplus. Okay, so the B says, suppose that the world orange price is below the US price before trade. Okay, what does it mean? Basically, remember, we have to have this concept really clear. When the price is below the US, it means that internationally the price is lower. So it means that it's better to buy from the international market, okay, given to the price which is lower. Naturally, it's going to be why. What's going to happen in this point? Basically, consumers, they will be naturally better off because they have to pay less. And on the other side, producers, they're going to be like worse off. Why? Because they have to offer the products, the oranges, to a lower price due to the takeovers, the international takeovers. So here we have to identify the new equilibrium price, quantity produced domestically, and quantity imported. Also show the change in the surplus of domestic consumers and producers. Has domestic total surplus increased or decreased? And has domestic total surplus increased or decreased? This is the question that we have to solve in some way. So here we have the supply, demand. We have the price in the y-axis, the quantity of the oranges, and the x-axis. So we have the Q star and P star, which is given by this that we depicted in the previous point. Here we have the PT. The PT is the world orange price. Okay, so as the exercise said, this is lower than the P star. Okay, so at this price, the producers from one side, they're going to willing just to produce QB, which is lower than Q star. That was the condition of autarky. Remember, autarky, it means basically the equilibrium without any trade. There is no imports and no exports. And we have the QA, which is the demand of the consumers. That naturally there's going to be higher. Why? Because the P is the price is lower than before. So this difference between QA and QB is going to be satisfied by international market. So this is going to be considered the import. So now we're going to outline all the information in this table. So we have before trade, after trade, and we will have the change for the consumer surplus, producer surplus, and the total surplus as a measure of welfare of the economy. So we have the before trade, as we showed before, is going to be A. This is going to be this triangle, the consumer surplus without trade. The other part, the before trade from the producer surplus, is going to be B plus C. So in this sense, we will have the total surplus A plus B plus C. After trade, what do the market? So what is going to happen with the market? So there's going to be naturally a change. So what is this change? Basically, the consumer. Okay, so the total surplus is going to be A plus B plus C plus D. What about the change? Consumers, they are better at what's predicted because the price is lower. So it's going to be B plus D, which is going to be earned by the consumers, and the producers, they will be worse off because they won't have any more B, which is going to be trespassed in some way to the consumers, and they will just have C. But at the end, this D is the gain of the trade. Okay, so the trade is good because as a welfare, as a total welfare, the economy is better off. Obviously, there's going to be one part affected, which in this case of imports are the producers, and the winners in some way there's going to be consumers for more products. Okay, at a better price. So producers are worse off and consumer better off. Okay, the second point says the world price of wine is below the price that will prevail in the United States in the absence of trade. So it's again the same condition as before, because given the price, which is in this case the price of wine is below the price that will prevail in the United States in the absence of trade. Okay, so the world price is below. So in this case, the country is going to be importer because the price is lower than the original or before trade. So assuming that American imports of wine are a small part of total world wine of production, it means that there are kind of price takers that they are not going to affect the world price. We need to draw a graph for the US market for the wine and the free trade. In this case, different from the previous one, we need to identify consumer surplus, producer surplus, and total surplus in an appropriate table. Actually, it's the same as before. So here we have the same case. I'm going to be like really fast because we already saw in the previous one. We have the original condition P star, Q star. We know that this PT is going to be the world price, which is lower than the US market. So this is going to be the demand, new demand. The consumer is going to be QA, and the producers they're going just to offer QB instead of Q star. And this is going to be the import quantity is going to be satisfied by the international market. So we know this denotation as we saw before, and the result is going to be exactly the same. We know this D, which is going to be the gain of the trade given the trade of wine. Okay, it's actually pretty much the same as before. So here we have a difference B. Now suppose that an unusual shift of the Gulf Stream leads to an unseasonably cold summer in Europe. destroying much of the grape harvest there. What effect does this shock have on the world price of wine? Using your graph and table from Part A, show the effect on consumer surplus, producer surplus, and total surplus in the United States. Who are the winners and losers? Is the United States as a whole better or worse off? So here I'm going to represent here the condition in the total market. So we know that this was the total market of wine when there was a pre-star, Q-star, the price and quantities of equilibrium, but given the weather problem, which is going to be affected. So it's going to be affected the supply. Okay, so in this case the supply is going to shift to the left. Okay, given the external shock, exogenous shock to the wine. So at this point the world price is going to be increased from P star to P prime. Okay, so now there's going to be an increase of the world price. So the price went up. Now we're going to try to represent this change of the world price in the wine market in the United States. So here I'm going to outline in a table with before price up and after price up. Due to the Gulf Stream, which was unseasonably cold summer. Okay, so here we have the supply and demand. This is remember the United States market. This was the P star. Remember there was a PT, which was the world price before the problem in the weather. So this was the QB, the quantity produced by the local, okay, but domestic producers, and the QA was the demand from the United States, and this difference was the imports. Now this PT prime, it represents the change. It represents the change of the world price after the cold summer in Europe. So instead of producing in United States QB, they will produce QC, and this it makes sense because given the higher price, given the problems in Europe, some of this quantity is going to be satisfied by the domestic production. On the other side, we will see how given the higher price, consumers, they will demand less. They will demand QD instead of QA. So here we are going to this P star before trade, PT after trade. It doesn't make like too much sense because here is like kind of the price before the price up, okay, and PT prime, as I said before, is the price after the problem, after the cold summer in Europe. So here we will have the before price, the consumer surplus. It was all these big triangle, A plus B plus C plus E plus F plus G, and the producer surplus, it was D. So the total surplus, it was all these. Okay, now what about after the price up? So after the price up, this is going to be the new price, which is going to be still lower than the P stars. There's going to be some imports, which is going to be this difference from QD and QC. So this one is going to be now the consumer surplus after this seasonal effect. It's going to be A, B, and G. So and the producer surplus is going to be instead C, E, F, and D. Okay, so here I'm really sorry, I apologize because I already saw here that actually the producer surplus is going to be just C and D. Okay, C and D. Okay, this is going to be the, so this please correct myself, that because I put here C plus E plus F plus D, what I just figured out is wrong is going to be C and D. Okay, so here is going to be the total surplus is going to be all this one, okay, and here the total surplus is going to be this, but without E and F. Okay, so here omit this one, E and F. So naturally the change is going to be minus E and minus F. Okay, so here the change, the producers, they're going to be better off, but not E plus F. The change is going to be C. Okay, so the producer surplus is going to be better by C, so that's going to be better off. Consumers, they're going to be worse off because they will lose all this, and the total change is going to be minus E and F. So it means that unseasonably cold summer in Europe, this is going to have an effect, a negative effect in the total welfare of this economy by the loss of E and F. Okay, so consumers are worse and producers are better, but not by this quantity, just by C. Okay, and US is the same, it is false. US is going to be worse off because of the loss, the loss of E and F. I hope it's clear the change that I said. Okay, the 3.3, the world price of cotton is below the no trade price in country A and above the no trade price in country B. Okay, so naturally we figure out fast here that because the world price is below, it means importers, and the other ones above, it means exporters. Okay, so A is going to be importers and B is going to be exporters. Okay, using supply and demand diagrams and welfare tables such as those in the chapter show the gains from trade in each country. Compare your results from the two countries. So we will start with country A. So country A, it faces this situation. They have like P star and Q stars the equilibrium, and they will have the PT, which is lower than the P star, and we will proceed as the previous example of the first one, as the orange and as the wine. Okay, they're going to be imports, so this is going to be the situation of them. Okay, naturally it's going to be the gain of the welfare. Okay, which is going to be worse off. So there's going to be worse off because of the imports. It's going to be producers, and which is going to be better off. There's going to be consumers, but which it wasn't before the trade. So now we will see the other case, the exports. Maybe we haven't analyzed yet in these points. So we have here P. Now the PT is going to be lower, higher than P star. So this is going to be the case. So the quantities produced, they're going to be, in this case, the demand is going to be QA. Naturally, it's going to be lower because the higher is higher the price. But on the other side, the producers, they are going to be better off because they are not going to produce more at P star, but they will produce at PT. So they have more incentive to produce. So it's going to be QB. So if the QB is just consumed of all production, of domestic production, is going to be just QA. So this difference is going to be the export. Okay. So here we have the table. Before trade, we have ABC as consumer surplus. This was the consumer surplus, ABC, because the P star was this one. Okay, so this is going to be the consumer surplus. And the producer surplus, it was E plus F. Now, so the consumer total surplus, it was this one. Okay, this old triangle. But after trade, consumer surplus naturally is going to be lower because they have to pay more. So it's going to be just this triangle A. So it's going to be kind of trespass from one side to other, from the consumers to the producers, because they will have, instead of E plus F, they will have all this triangle BC plus E plus F. And this is going to be this plus D is going to be all the total surplus. So we already figure out how the trade as the import is analogously the same as the export. Is going to be a total welfare increase, where there's going to be losers and winners. In this case, which is the winner? So the winners are the producers, given the higher price and given the exports, and the consumers are going to be worse off because they have to pay more. Okay, so 4. Suppose that Congress imposes a tariff on imported autos to protect the US auto industry from foreign competition. Okay, so assuming that the US is a price sector in the world auto market, show on a diagram the change in the quantity of import, the loss to US consumers, the gain to US manufacturers, government revenue, and the deadweight loss associated with the tariff. So here is a tariff. So remember, when there is a tariff, it's basically a tax to the imports. So it naturally means that the US they are imports. So it's kind of they're going to protect kind of the industry, because remember that when there is a lower price in the market, the producers, they are affected. They are worse off. So in this case, when you put or you fix a tariff, in some way you're trying to protect the producers, okay? But there's going to have some problem, because remember, every time there is a tax, there is a deadweight loss associated. So in this case, we need to figure out the loss to consumers that can be decomposed into 3 pieces. The first, a transfer to domestic producers, a transfer to the government, and a deadweight loss. So we need to use our diagram to identify these 3 pieces. So here at the table, you already notice that there is one new actor here. It's going to be the government, because they fix the tariff, so they will receive some revenue due to this tariff. So we will have here the case before tariff and after the tariffs, and we will going to have the change. And we are going to figure out this one, how we can decompose this loss of consumers. So here we have the natural case, which is supply demand. We have the P star, Q star of the auto market in the US. But remember, they are importers. So it means that the P1, which is the price, which is going to be the price before the tariff, is going to be lower than P star. So in this case, we have the QA, which is the demand of the US market, and we will have the QB, which is the producer's quantity, given the P1, which we naturally see here, given the lower price, the producers, they're going to be worse off because of the price that they have to produce, which is much lower than before. But on the other side, we have the demand. It means the consumers, they have to pay a lower price than P star, so this is going to offer QA. So this difference between QA and QB, they are the imports. Now there's going to be a new price, which is PT. Naturally, this PT is basically P1 plus tariff. So if the price was $20,000 and now the import is $20,000 plus the 10%, so plus $2,000. So this is going to be this difference, okay? This is going to be this $2,000 difference of the autos now. So here this is going to be the new price. So at this new price, which is the tariff, naturally the objective of the tariffs, that producers, they can be like kind of more competitive between quotation marks, so they can produce more. They can produce, instead of QB, they will produce QC, okay? And on the other side, the consumers, they will be like kind of worse off, because they cannot buy the autos at price of P1. They have to pay PT. So this is going to be QD. So you notice here that you grasp here that the imports are going to be reduced, okay? From the difference, remember the previous difference was QA minus QB, but now after the tariff, the imports is going to be QD minus QC. So here is the new imports with tariff, and this one is the imports without tariff. So now we're going to figure out how our table behaves. So here we have the first. Before tariff, the consumer surplus, it was all this one, all this triangle, okay? This one all is going to be all the big triangle. Okay, A plus B plus C plus D plus E plus F. The only part that it doesn't belong to consumers is the G, which is going to be the producer surplus. What about the government revenue? Okay, the government revenue is going to be naturally zero because it was before tariff. Okay, so the total surplus was all this big triangle plus G. Now after tariff. So now the consumers, they have to pay PT instead of P1. So they will have this consumer surplus, A plus B. This is going to be the after tariff. The producer surplus naturally is going to be bigger because this is the objective of the policy of the tariff. Okay, so in this case they produce at this point QC, so they will have C instead of C plus G instead of just G. So it's going to be this one. What about the government revenue? So remember, what is the government revenue? We can represent these like intuitions in some way, because we have here, this is going to be the import with tariff. So remember, all these autos which is going to, they are going to enter to the US market, there is going to be tax. So this one is going to be this base, is going to be this rectangle. So the base, which is going to be the quantity of autos which is going to be imported, times the size, the tariff size. So all this E is going to be the government revenue. So here we have the total surplus, which is going to be this triangle from consumer side, this producer surplus, and this E, which is the government revenue. So already you saw here that the consumer surplus is going to be decomposed in three. Okay, so first is going to be the total loss is going to be this one. Okay. Let me see here. It's going to be all this one, C plus D plus E plus F. This is going to be the total loss. The producer surplus is going to be C. The government revenue is going to be E. And this is going to be the total surplus, D plus F. The loss, because this one, this is not going to belong to anyone after the tariff. Okay? So now how we can decompose this one in three. The first one we need to decompose here is the transfer to domestic producers. So the transfer is going to be this C, because it belongs, or it belonged before to the consumer side, but after the tariff is not going to be anymore to the consumers. It's going to be part of the producers. So this one is going to be the transfer to producers. The other part, this E, it was before to the consumer side, but after the tariff is not going to be anymore part of them. So in this case, this E is a transfer to the government, and this D and F is going to be the part of the deadweight loss. So we decomposed the consumer loss in three. Okay, so this is what the exercise asks for. Okay, so now we have the fifth point. Okay, according to an article in the New York Times, November 5th, 1993, many Midwest wheat farmers oppose the North America Free Trade Agreement, which is known as NAFTA, as much as many corn farmers support it. For simplicity, assume that the United States is a small country in the markets for both corn and wheat, and that without the free trade agreement, the United States would not trade these commodities internationally. Both of these assumptions are false, but they do not affect the qualitative responses to the following questions. Okay, so there is the NAFTA. So from one side, we see how which ones, there's going to be one part which is going to be worse off and the other part which is going to be better off. Automatically, we can assume in some sense that the people that there is going to be better off, it means, so the producers are going to be better off, it means that the price, the international price is above the no trade price. In the other side, we can like assume we can have kind of intuition that the producers, that there's going to be worse off. It's going to be the case that the price is going to be lower than the no trade price. So here we're going to analyze the wheat market in US. So here we have again the first condition, Q star, P star, and given that there is going to be worse off is because there are going to be importers. So here we have the QA and QB. This is going to be the imports, and this table, as we have summarized before, we know that the producers, there's going to be worse off because this minus B, okay? This minus B is going to be the part that they don't have anymore. So for this reason, we will have here the wheat, in this case, the wheat, the oppose, okay, because they are worse off. On the other case, we can analyze the other case for the corn market. So the corn market is going to be opposite because the PT, which represents basically the world price, is going to be higher than the P star. So in this case, we will see here, we analyze as we saw before, and we conclude that the producer surplus is going to be B plus C plus D. So this part, it wasn't before the trade, okay? So they're going to be better off. So for this reason, we know that there's going to be equivalence between the wheat farmers opposed and the corn farmers that support it. So here B, considering both markets together, does NAFTA make US farmers as a group better or worse off? Does it take US consumers as a group better or worse off? Does it make the United States as a whole better or worse off? So remember, we have from one side consumers are better off, okay? So this is the wheat market. So from the other side, we have the consumers are better off, corn market, because in one part, the wheat market, they have to pay lower price, and in the corn market, they have to pay higher price. We have in one part, from one side, farmers are better off, which is the case of corn market, and from the other side, farmers are worse off. This is the wheat market. But remember which this is a fact. In both markets, even there are winners and losers. When we sum up all the surplus, all the welfare, okay, total welfare, it is bigger than the former situation. Okay, so as a whole, we can assume, or we can conclude better, that we have a better condition for the US. So 6, and the last. Okay, the last but not least. Okay, we have here, imagine that the winemakers in the state of Washington petitioned the state government to tax wines imported from California. They argue that this tax would both raise tax revenue from the state government and raise employment in the Washington state wine industry. Do you agree with these claims? It is a good policy. So here we have again our normal condition as usual. We have the Q star, P star, the no trade equilibrium, and here we have the P1, which was the import with before tariff. But after tariff, we will have PT. So naturally, we will have QC, which is higher, which is basically what we really want to do, which is there's going to be raise employment in the Washington. But naturally, it's going to be fulfilled because it's going to be QC, which is higher than QB. With naturally, we need more people to work and produce to QC. And here what imports with tariff is going to be difference between QC and QD, and the other is going to be the imports without tariffs. So here we have before tariff, this is the all consumer surplus, okay? Producer surplus is going to be just G, and this one, as we saw before, is the same. So here what is important to understand here? Do you agree with these claims? Which are the claims? The first claim, it says that it's going to be raised, the tax revenue, naturally, is going to be E, okay? And it's going to raise the employment, yes, because there's going to be more labor required. There's going to be more labor required because of the increase of the production. but it is a good policy. It's kind of subtle, it's kind of subjective, this part, but I must say that it could be not a good policy, because as a total, the country, the winemakers, they are losing D and F. Okay, so as a total, this is not a good policy. Okay, I hope this video it has worth, and thank you for watching my video, and great success with economics. See you in the next video. Bye bye.